Brendan, who is calling in from Toronto. So, Brendan, thanks for calling in all the way from the Great White North. What's going on?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Doing? Yeah, good.
Great. So I know one question that's made the mainstream lately is should billionaires exist? I just want to start off. That's not really my point.
Okay.
My point is more the narrative that the wealthy create, that we need them, which I know is tied to that should billionaires exist, but I do hope that it's distinct enough.
Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely a lot of talk right now about class inequality, I think, worldwide. I think that's a continuing kind of narrative in our topics of conversation, and just noticing the wealth disparity between different people. And I have noticed, I've seen this as well, where people are like, well, wealthy people are using their resources to help other people and provide these benefits for society. Like, look at Amazon right now, who's helping out with the COVID stuff. You know, they're providing a benefit that other people get to. And so that's kind of some of the arguments they're making. Now, the counter arguments that I hear to that are along the lines of, well, you know, it's the workers themselves that are actually creating this. It's not necessarily the millionaires or billionaires themselves doing things. Yes, do they play a part? Do they help plan things? Do they administrate? Of course. But there is a kind of a question of, well, should one person even have $1 billion? Is there somebody on earth that's worthy enough to even, have that much wealth, and do they deserve it? Which I think is really interesting. If you were to ask me, I'd say that, yeah, like at a certain point, having that amount of money, and obviously it's not all liquid cash, we don't have to get into all that, but like having just that amount of power and status in society, I would definitely feel like if that was me, that I would have to contribute back in some way, and want to give back. But there's no real law or thing in place that makes people have to contribute back. It's all voluntary, and that's another thing that happens with too. I don't, are people doing stuff, and are they doing philanthropy, and are they doing great things with that? Yes, I think that's awesome. But for every public person that's philanthropic and is doing great stuff, there's another guy who's just, not out there and keeping it, and who knows what they're doing with that money. So yeah, it's definitely a big conflict.
One thing that I hear in that question, and that's a great question, is should there be billionaires? Okay. Yeah. It's not just a matter of should there be ethically, but should there be billionaires legally? Should we prevent billionaires from existing?
Yeah.
Should we stop billionaires from existing? Because the question is, what does that look like, right? How do you stop billionaires from existing? Well, you could tax the living daylights out of them, right? This is really an economics question and an ethics question at the same time. I would think that if you are accumulating billions of dollars, it's in poor taste to keep it for yourself like a dragon sitting on top of a pile of gold, right? I think that that's tacky and it should be shameful. However, should the government get involved in prying the gold out of the dragon's claws? Maybe. How? Because there can be some really scary ways that can happen. And you're seeing the difference between more conservative and more liberal progressive ways of looking at that problem. I think that there's an argument to be made for disincentivizing the acquisition of wealth, but there's also an argument to be made for not punishing people for success.
Yeah.
And there's a real tension in our society over how do we meet our goal of wealth equality without at the same time turning this into the big boogeyman, a communist or a socialist state.
But you know what, Johnny? There's also people out there who say that no, we shouldn't even have wealth equality. That people should just earn based on their own merits, and that's just the way it is. If they don't have enough, they're not trying hard enough, you know. And that's another narrative too, because we're part of an individualistic society that you know, everybody is just temporarily embarrassed millionaires. You know, like I heard somebody today talk about like, oh man, when I'm rich, I'm gonna do, you know, X, Y, and Z. It's just like, yeah, like that's definitely not a guarantee, you know, of any kind of, even if you're pursuing your own business ventures, there's going to be things in there that fail, and people have really mistaken ideas about what some progressive ideas look like a more progressive tax structure. I was talking to my boss about this a few weeks ago. He was like, yeah, you know, I don't want rich people to get like, you know, 70% of their wealth taxed or whatever, you know. And it's like, well, that's not what these arguments are. Like it's in these brackets, and you only get taxed on the first sum of your wealth. It's not the entire sum. It's put into different, you know, and these are complicated, kind of nuanced ideas that it's hard to convey to people who either one, aren't as interested, or two, already have a misinformed idea to begin with, and needs to be correct. So yeah, it's a difficult conversation to have even now. That's what I think about.
I've had that same argument. Sorry, go ahead, Brendan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and like I said, I totally get that question. Should billionaires exist? And you know, I'm more talking about like we've grown up in a society, and I remember being a kid and seeing headlines and stuff of some rich person. I don't know who it was when I was young, but some rich person donating some money to solve our country's ills or some type of ills. And to me now, it almost, because I was very Christian, and when I've been thinking about this, it's almost felt like I was indoctrinated into this way of thinking. That like, yes, these rich people exist and they do good things. But I feel like as a society, we've forgotten that their wealth was created in this country and on the backs of workers. I know this is sounding socialist, but it was created on workers. And I know you guys down there in the States have a real problem with healthcare. Like, why do these ills exist when the workers of the country have created this wealth? People are hoarding it, and when and this is the most disgusting thing for me, it is so disgustingly egotistical when people come out and say, I'm donating $1 billion to this, or I'm donating $1 million to this. Is that not an ego trip? Like it's Michael Bloomberg, $500 million blowing on a terrible, like the worst campaign you can imagine. And I just looked on his website, a big press release. He's donating $40 million to help with this COVID pandemic around the world.
Yeah, I see that too. And
it's disgustingly egotistical, and it just seems like this narrative has been drilled into us that these are good people doing good things, and to me it feels like they're paying for this perception that we need them.
Yeah, I remember when the cathedral burned down in it was Paris, right? Yeah, I can't remember the name of the
Notre Dame.
The Notre Dame, of course. When the Notre Dame stuff was happening, I can't believe I couldn't remember the Notre Dame. You know, there was a
such an atheist.
I know, right? Well, there was this big thing where a whole bunch of billionaires and millionaires were giving money to it, and then the comparisons of the donations to that versus the Australian wildfires, right? And it was just like, these are not the same. These are more of a legal trip. Now, I have thought about this though, and I think though, if Bill Gates, you know, like if my mom gets cancer or something, and I can't afford it, and Bill Gates wants to give money to me, and it's gonna make Bill Gates feel good and look good, like I'm still gonna accept the money. Like you know what I mean? Like I'm all right with that. I'm not gonna be like, look, I can't let you give me this money because this is clearly an ego trip with you. I mean, a good work is still a good work, I think, even if intentions may not be misaligned. But yeah, I don't know.
But the thing is, he's not doing that. I mean, if he gives that to you, he's not giving it to your neighbor that also has cancer. And I mean, unless he is, and then that's what I'm saying. Then at least it's improving all of society. It's that has been created. The most wealthy countries in the world ever existed right now. You guys know this. You always are told that the wealthiest country ever to exist. And like we can't have personal, like we can't ourselves come together and fund the arts. We have to wait for, again, Michael Bloomberg to come and give us a grant. Or another thing I was thinking about was scholarships. Now, I've been in school post-secondary many years. I don't know how many people's scholarships I've had to apply to, and they're the arbiters of who's of the lower class. They're the arbiters of who can get an education, and that is just wrong.
It is interesting. Yeah, because I guess the reason why you think it's wrong, Brendan, and maybe I'm summarizing here. I want to try to at least try to do some SE here a little bit. Is that it sounds like the belief is that private citizens should not be responsible for the health and life of and prosperity of other citizens. In other words, it's private citizens are the determining factor between someone's success and someone's failures, I guess, like with the scholarships thing. Like that's something that's determined by an organization or an individual that can decide based on arbitrary factors if they wanted to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in essence, and I would never classify myself as this, but it almost seems like the best way to say it is that it's almost an anarchist sentiment, like the people, the electors, the people that are electing their governments and that are involved in the civics of their community, in greater numbers, those should be the people that get to say where this money is put.
Yeah, that's an interesting belief. I probably agree with that, but Johnny definitely wanted to say something there. I cut him off, so go ahead, Johnny.
There's a few things, and this is a good conversation. Just to do some street epistemology, let me ask you this, Brendan: how much would a billionaire have to donate for you to believe that billionaire was making a good humanitarian use of their ability to generate income?
There we go. Great question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Okay, so how much would I think a billionaire would have to donate? Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, because my first thought is to say that if they have $1 billion, that they can't make that image of themselves.
So, could you say that again? I didn't hear you quite right.
I think he's saying just the fact that the fact that he has $1 billion is wrong in the first place, right?
Because he's let his wealth accumulate to $1 billion, I would feel, unless he's had some, for lack of a better term, come to Jesus moment, where he's been like, this is crazy, and I have to do something to right this. I guess if I knew in his psyche that that's what was going on, I would be able to forgive that. But if they've intentionally let their wealth accumulate to a point where they're multi-billionaires, I'm actually not sure I would be so forgiving on that.
Have you heard the phrase? You have to have money to make money.
Well, yes, of course.
Right. What if a billionaire was using their billions to generate more billions, and then taking a portion of those billions and devoting it toward the betterment of humankind? Would that be a good use of money?
If they're the arbiters saying it, I would say that's oligarchy.
It's oligarchy? Okay.
That's why I'm saying that the citizens, the people that make up the largest civic body of the country, should have the most weight to say how that money is spent.
Okay. What if the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were able to devote several $100 million to eliminating, let's say, something like malaria, and then let's say a cooperative organization of individuals working together could generate a maximum of $10 million to combat malaria, and the individuals did this on a grassroots level? Would you think that the cooperative organization was objectively better than Bill and Melinda Gates, or would it be the other way around, or would it be some other thing?
So is the scenario here grassroots funding for $10 million for just one payment, we'll say, and Bill and Melinda Gates still donating $700 million. Is that the?
Let's make it 100 million. Let's make it 100 million because 700 million is a crazy amount of money. Well, so it's 100 million.
But I guess my point, and I'll answer the question plainly. To me, objectively, the $100 million would be doing more. But my problem is that we're in this situation. If they were able to amass that $100 million rather than us being able to invest $10 million every year for 10 years to fight this.
Okay. I guess my question is that this would be a conservative position, is who is in a better position to determine how a person's wealth accumulation should be spent? Is it the person who accumulated the wealth by the sweat of their brow, allegedly? Or is it a group of people?
Well, I mean, I guess in that respect, I would have to fall under the technocrat label. It would be the people that have...
Oh, Brendan, you're cutting out there a little bit. You sound like you're a little bit. Yeah, you're a little bit away from your phone there.
Oh, am I clear now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought now. But what I was saying is that it would be who I would like to see determining how this money is spent is a group of well-educated citizens specializing in these areas that come together, talk about it, discuss it, study it, and come up with an educated thing. Like who was, I don't know who it was, some cereal magnate in Canada donated like $100 million.
Yeah.
How did he come up with that amount? Like, how is that the amount that we need to get through this pandemic?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much we can do with this. We've covered some really great ground here with this stuff because this is stuff that I think about all the time, and this is stuff that I don't have too many conversations about on this particular program. And I'm interested in kind of doing some more of it. I guess it's with politics, it gets a little bit more dicey. It gets a little more spicy than what's usually goes on a lot of the ACA programs and stuff. But it goes hand in hand with this idea of, hey, we are individual skeptical people who want to make the best decisions for ourselves and other people. And how do we do that? How do we determine that policy? And I think us asking tough questions, like Johnny was doing some great question asking there. And figuring out,
great. I had to think about that one. What would be better? That was a great question.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to do more of that for myself so that I can do that more for callers like you, Brendan. So thanks again for calling in. I'm going to go ahead and get to some of the next callers here. But it was
Thanks so
much. Great talking to you. And I'd love to hear from you again sometime. And I'm going to hit that drop button there. It's a little more awkward because I don't have a nice big button to press. I'm clicking on links and things, and it's a little more like I'm trying to get to the end of the call. But yeah, it's fascinating because I wouldn't even considered a lot of these options a few years ago. I would have been like, they deserve it. It's their money. Just screw it. Now it's like, is it really all theirs? Like, there's a lot of systemic stuff that gets into people's accumulation of their wealth.
Right. And, they're standing on the shoulders of giants, and they're standing on the shoulders of individual people. There is, I don't know if you've ever read War and Peace, but
not all the way. Not all the way.
I dragged myself through the end of it, and I didn't like it. But at the end of it, Tolstoy talks about those people, those people who guide the course of history are the ones who are least involved in the day-to-day drudgery, right? The generals, the presidents, the czars, and what have you. They have, it's almost like they have the least stake in any individual action. You can see how they're sheltered. They're protected from the consequences of it. Whereas the person who has the least ability to guide the course of history the ground trooper, the farmer, the person who the war comes to them and goes through them, right? And so you've got someone like Bill and Melinda Gates, and they do donate millions of dollars every year to these giant causes, right?
Yeah.
But they're also propped up by those of us who buy Windows, right?
Yeah.
And those of us who need,
they're able to do good because we are consumers of their products. Like that's kind of the thing there. And man, Bill Gates is really complicated too, especially if we're talking about the early days of Microsoft and compared to what they're doing now. Obviously, I think some of the stuff that he's funding is fantastic, but the critique is more of the organization of the systems itself, right? The organization of the wealth I was doing. And like I said, we could go about this all day, but I'm glad we got to touch on it a little bit tonight. I have 2 more calls on the line.